Oi, bom. All right, I think it's time to start. Appreciate y'all being here as we continue this series. We're entitled it Peace Beyond Understanding, the idea of biblical insights into pain, suffering, and mental health. And Austin and I are co-teaching it, going back and forth. So he taught last week, and he'll come back the next week as well. So we're just kind of going every other. This first, since it's a quarter, right? Basically 3 months. We're spending this first month looking at Genesis, the first 4 stories there, and how that sets the stage for why is the world a mess? What did God intend it to be? What has gone wrong? What's the solution? That's all right there. And those, I think, are important to set the stage because they're not just interesting stories in and of themselves. They actually really are themes introduced as stories that will repeat themselves throughout the entire storyline of the Bible. We just often don't know to notice. And so they're really foundational. To set the stage. Then month 2, we're going to look at, we're going to borrow a little bit from some of the schooling that he has completed and I'm working through to help us conceptualize what's wrong with, like, every model of therapy has a few things that it needs to address. One is, how does it conceptualize what's wrong? So we'll tackle that. And then what does it conceptualize is better? And then how does it get you from this one to this one? And we're going to use 2-3 of those, not because, and we're going to put that all in the biblical setting, because I find it helpful, if nothing else, to explain how certain people are trying to explain what's happening. And I hope you'll find it as insightful as well when we get to it. So then, 3rd month, we're going to look at some key concepts in the Bible: love, forgiveness, you remember? Confession, and how that plays into the importance of what it means to be right with God, right with self, mental health. And so that's where we're headed, okay? All right, so last time, Austin talked about the serpent and how the serpent shows up in the story, and the serpent is basically offering. The essence of the temptation of the serpent is this: you can be like God. In other words, it can be your life. You can be in charge. You can go do whatever you want. You decide what makes you happy. I mean, you can, a lot of follow your heart, whatever. There's a lot of little hashtags you can put to it. But that's the essence of what the serpent offers. And it sounds cool. We want to go do our stuff. We want to, We are individuals. We want to make decisions. But the irony of it is that we were already created to be in the image of God. We are already empowered to co-rule with the presence of God. We are already set up to relationally tackle the world and represent the presence of God here as God does so cosmically. And what the serpent was offering without it, I mean, it's just brilliant marketing. Without what the serpent really didn't take time to explain is that you're going to go about making decisions without the presence of God. And without the presence of God, the story of the Bible always presents that without God, you have a reality of death, of suffering, of pain, of chaos, of conflict, of brokenness. So you can rule two ways: with the presence of God, without the presence of God. And without the presence of God really is with the presence of the serpent. So it's, what realities do you want to create? What existence do you want to have? And every kid, I mean, parents are trying to raise their kids to eventually go out, right? We want to launch them out. But if they roll their eyes at you at 8 years old, it's my life, I can do whatever I want. And you're like, fine, off you go. They're going to live into a world of pain and suffering because they're not equipped, they're not ready, they don't have the positive relationship with the parents. They don't have the support. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. So that's basically what happens in Genesis 3. Okay, so then we have a conflict of worlds, a conflict of worldviews. Two different ways of being, two different ways of processing, two different ways of deciding, two different ways of relating with self, with others, with environment, with community, two different ways. And y'all hear that, right? It's like, man, the doctor promised me it would stop. Okay, you hear that. It's good. All right. It's quite angelic, right? I feel like I'm teaching. Oh, you know. So, was that there last time?
No. I weren't there last week.
Okay. It's like, man, I'm really losing my mind.
They were in a small auditorium, but they're moving because they're doing the renovations.
Can I be like,
stuff, so.
pipe down? All right, okay. So, we'll try to. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I don't even know what I was talking about. Something about God, the devil. So worldviews, right? Another thing that the Bible's, the story is trying to present is that the conflict of worldviews, it's already happened, it's happening, if not already happened, in the spiritual realm. The physical realm is about to experience what that looks like because we're going to make a decision of allowing that to enter this realm. So like we get to make that decision. And what we're saying yes to isn't just, the serpent go out and make a mess out there somewhere. What we're saying yes to is the serpent come in and make a mess in here. Then we're going to go out and make a mess. That make sense? We're going to be the agents that go out from the presence of God and unleash chaos. We will then represent the serpent instead of just God. It's not that God disappears, but we're not then exclusively representing the presence of God. We're going to represent quite a mixture of things, and it's going to get messy. So, right, the stories were, that's already what I'm saying. In Genesis 3, right after Eve and Adam make the choice to give the scenic route a try, there's a list basically of things that go wrong. And In my humble opinion, this is not a list of God setting punishments upon humanity. This is a list of God describing the mess we're going to make. To me, that's an important difference. Because God could have maybe give us a timeout, but instead he's going to create a world of pain and suffering and send us all to hell. That's really not what's happening. He's describing, like, you want to go out? You want to go face the world? Here's what you're going to face. Here's what you're going to unleash. Here's the mess you're going to create. He's being prophetic, right? And that includes the very first thing that goes bad, right, is they're naked. Okay, they were naked. The difference is guilt and shame. If you've experienced that, and I'm going to guess you have, it's a horrible, horrible, it just eats at you. It's a horrible feeling, guilt and shame. First thing, they don't burst in flames immediately, like, you'll surely die. Well, they haven't, but it's worse because they're dying. And the first thing that dies is innocence. There's guilt and shame. Then there's broken relationships. They're going to hide from self. They're going to cover. They're going to hide from others. They're going to hide from God. And then they're going to blame each other. Not that that ever happens in relationships, right? They're going to blame each other. And it's just going to a mess. And then they're kicked out from the garden. A cosmic bouncer is put at the door. And somehow they can't come back that way. And you're like, oh, this is going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. But in all that mess, Genesis 3:16, God says that he's got a plan. We're not crystal clear yet at that point, right? Spoiler alert, pointing to Jesus. But at that point, we're like, not sure where all this is going to go, but it's going to go somewhere. So the fall, right, Genesis 3, we're going to look at Cain and Abel, we're going to look at the flood. Maybe we're skipping the flood. We're looking at the tower. Okay, we're looking at the tower. So forget the flood. All right. What happens to a world where they are now not in the exclusive presence of God? Underline exclusive. What happens where there's an inner conflict that projects out on relationships? Because what the Bible is saying, that what's gone wrong so far is the presence of the serpent, right? We've allowed another presence to come in. And now we have 4 broken relationships. With God, that's where the chaos starts. With self, there's the shame. With others, there's the whole guilt and blaming each other. And with the world around us. And one way that's portrayed is God says, you're going to now go work the ground, but it's going to fight you. I never plant weeds, but it's there every year. It just grows. It doesn't matter. It's 112 degrees outside. The only thing blooming are weeds. I spray stuff like it. I mean, I'll get cancer before I kill the weeds. It's going to fight you. You're going to fight. There's the environment. You are not in tune with the environment anymore, and it's going to fight you. Stuff is going to want to eat you, but bacteria is going to try to, eat your flesh. Pandemic is going to try to kill. It's going to fight you. I'm like, welcome to the world. Doesn't that sound fun to rule now? Okay, so here's a few relational questions. This is important. What happens to relationships when humanity gets to decide what's right and wrong? Not God. I get to decide. You get to decide. How's that working? Because inevitably, I'm going to decide one thing, you're going to decide another thing, then who's going to win? Who's then right? Well, of course I am, right? So you also think that. What happens to relationships? What happens to relationships when the image of God now is not the standard by which we measure each other? We now think of each other as sometimes the problem, the enemy, those people, whatever other category you want to put out there. We think of them as like not family, not bound by the image of God. We think of other people groups. We don't even think of we divide ourselves in so many ways and forget the common humanity. So a lot of things that I've been finding in therapy, psychology, all that, is they got a lot of concepts that I would think they took out of the Bible and just wiped God out. And one of those is what they call now common humanity. That if we emphasize common humanity, it actually promotes better mental health. Yeah, that's called Genesis 1 and 2, right? The image of God. The image of God. So what happens? Well, what happens to relationships when we seek to not co-rule, but rule over each other? Well, death. That's what happens. Death, right? That's so. What's the very next story? It's one brother killing the other. It's one brother killing the other. So, what's the tale of two brothers? Let's put all that up there. Okay, the tale of two brothers is there's Cain and Abel. Where did Cain and Abel come from? Where, how old are they? Is it a Tuesday? What? I don't know. Bible doesn't seem to care to tell us. That's a lot of questions we have as Westerners who like stories told a certain way. They don't care. They're telling you what you need to know. Now, there's a lot of books and go down all kinds of fun rabbit holes if you so choose, but we're just going to skip all that for the sake of this class and just go. So there's Cain and Abel, and Cain and Abel come to present things to God. In the ancient world, that's how just about every people group connected to their gods is with some kind of offering, some kind of approach, if you're going to come to the gods, you got to come with something. You and I are like, that's weird, we don't do it that way. But just by saying this, everybody listening to that story would have been like, ooh, yeah, you're approaching your God. And why are they approaching their God? Because that's the solution. You have to come back to God. You have to have the exclusive presence of God. Here's one crystal clear claim of the Bible about Yahweh, this God, that He is the only source of life. Have you ever wondered why is death the punishment? Couldn't it have been a timeout? A spanking. In today's world, a spanking is perhaps worse than death, so no spanking. Taking your cell phone away. Why death? It's not God being petty and cruel. If God is the only source of life, any path you take, regardless of your well intentions, is a path towards death. That's why. Any path you take, if you give a good turn around, do a little U-turn, head back to God, where are you headed towards? Life. That's literally what repent means, turn around. Get on those little, if you guys notice, there's a few more like roundabouts out there. I find those fun. Little side story here. When we were took a group of North Mac people to Bahamas. We also, when we were in the Cayman Islands to do a week-long mission work with some of our missionaries, they have all kinds of roundabouts. And we had like 3-4 vehicles, between the whole group. And so like I'm leading and we get on the roundabout and I just found it fun to just keep going around. And everybody's following me. I'm like, I feel the power, right? But then the last time, everybody came with the GPS. I did the roundabout. They kept going. That wasn't as fun. Okay, that's a bonus. So you do the roundabout. You come back to God. You come towards life, right? So that's why that's there. Right, so they're approaching God, like, what did it mean? What was the sacrifice? What explanation did God give? We don't know. It's implied that they both know what God expects. And they're offering sacrifice to come to God, okay? So then Cain brings fruit. Abel brings, buddy, y'all remember your stories? Yeah, he brings the best of his flock, okay? I think there's a really good case to be made here that God does not want us to be fruitarians. That we should probably be just good old meat eaters. You don't think so? No, okay. That might be a little stretch on theology there. But whatever about those two, and at least what's clear to me is that they both knew what to do. Abel makes a priority and offers the best. Cain is kind of just like going through the motions. Cain's not happy. His relationship with God is fraught. And instead of him fixing and focusing on that relationship, he blames his brother. Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because his parents blamed others. His dad blamed mom and mom blamed the serpent. So why shouldn't he blame his brother? Then God's going to interact with him, and he's going to get a choice to be made. But hold that thought. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted?" I mean, that's a rhetorical question. Yes. So it's implied he knows what's right. You and I are a little fuzzy on that, but he knew what to do. But if you do not do what's right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. They should have kept the same word because it's the same idea. You must rule it. You're like, oh wait, weren't we created to rule? Yes. How were we created to rule? Weren't we created to rule the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky, the creatures of the waters? Like, we were created to rule these animals. Yet there's something crouching out there in the tall grass, and we must rule it. So we're capable of ruling it. But in the Bible, or in the Genesis 1 and 2, what capacitated us to rule? Two things. The image of God and the presence of other. The one time in the Bible it says it is, in the Genesis 1 and 2, it says it is not good. 7 times it says it's good. 1 time it says it's not good is when humanity is one. So we're to be two to most accurately co-rule and represent the image of God. So whatever he needs to be doing here is at least go to God, which he's having God actually goes to him. He's having a conversation with God, and he needs to be collaboratively ruling this animal. What other character do we have in the story so far here, just in Genesis 4? What other person could he co-rule with? His brother. His brother. If his relationship with his brother is done well, they're actually going to rule over this animal crouching in the grass. But instead, he ignores what God says. He does take his brother out in the field and does what? Bashes his head in. I think what needed to be done there is we needed some very robust laws on prohibiting the use of rocks. Because that would have solved it all. Of course not. That's indifferent. What's the problem? It's within. It's within Cain. And if Cain had actually leaned on his brother, worked on that relationship, that really is what would have solved the problem. Instead, he leans on his own understanding, his own feelings, his own unresolved inner conflict, and he takes it out on his brother. Right? So the word sin, it's kind of icky. A lot of, folks feel judged. Go ye sinner. Don't you say I'm a sinner. We're a little unsure about the word. What does the word mean? The word in Hebrew is transliterated there is the word hata. The K is silent. Hata. In the Greek is hamartia, and they both mean the same thing. Missing the mark. Missing the mark. Well, that doesn't sound too judgy. That just sounds factual. Is missing the mark a feeling? If I go to the range, Barry, and I put some down range there, then we bring back the silhouette. Do we feel how I did? Well, I either hit the mark or I didn't hit the mark. And if I didn't hit the mark, I sinned. And let me give you a couple other examples. In Judges chapter 20, verse 16, there's the Israelite tribe of Benjamin, and they're actually trained snipers, but with a slingshot. But they're so good that they never sinned. What does that have to... It literally just means they've never missed. They just don't miss. Then in Proverbs 19:2, it warns against making hasty decisions, or you might miss the path. It's the same word. You might sin. So it's not judgy. It's descriptive. And what is humanity missing? What is humanity missing? What's the mark? Of what it means to be human, of what it means to be relational, of what it means to have God, of what it means to rule, of what it means to make decisions, of what it means to be a grown human. We're just missing it. We go out and make a horrible mess. So the idea of looking to devour, right? In Peter's letter, he says, the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. If we lived in the world, let's say there's lions out in the parking lot eating some of our members as they go out to their car. It's kind of hard to keep attendance going when folks get, eaten. When service is up, and you go to your car, what would your demeanor be? You ready? Let's try to envision. Checking Facebook. Barry be taking selfies along the way. Right? Would you just be chatty, looking up at the sky? No, you'd be in high alert. Right? We should know what that feels like because we're like that all the time. Many of us, we often call that anxiety. We just know something's wrong somewhere, and we're just ramped up. Now, that's functional and makes good sense if you're about to be eaten by a lion because you really want to be paying attention. But I think maybe part of us, and I'm not diagnosing anybody's anxiety. I'm not allowed to do that yet. Yes. We're just ramped up because it may be in part because there's something out there just trying to eat us. It's something crouching at the door, wanting to have us, wanting to get us to miss the mark. It's this animal-like imagery, just kind of looking to pounce. Not a cute little kitty, a scary one. So here's some things about evil. Evil is always looking to devour. Evil is about destroyed relationships. That's what it does. That's what it does. Relationships are going to suffer. Evil looks to destroy relationships. And how does it do so? With lies. I mean, I shouldn't say never, because I actually think there's a church of Satan. But with the exception of those few, most of humanity does not wake up in the morning and be like, you know what? I'm going to worship the devil today and I'm going to ruin my marriage. There's lies, there's deception, there's craftiness. So we just get out there, we think we're making brilliant choices, we think we're standing up for ourselves, we think we're getting our needs met or whatever, and we're just destroying relationship with self. The worst relationships, the ones we're the harshest with, is the one we have with ourselves when we're talking to ourselves in the mirror. We're the most brutal, harshest, judgmental, worst human beings ever when we're treating ourselves. If we could be as kind as we are to our enemies, we'd already feel better. We're just brutal. We're just brutal. That inner voice is just brutal. We must be alert not only from the evil out there, but we should be on high alert with the evil within. It's here, folks. It starts here. It starts here. Once again, if evil are lies, how should we fight lies? With truth. All these other weapons, it ain't doing it. It isn't doing it. It's truth. Truth. All right, so back to the tale of two brothers. Here's another fascinating thing. Individual choices have collective consequences. Individual choices have collective consequences. Always. It's my life. Yeah, no, it's not. I do whatever I want. You can, but people are going to suffer. People are going to suffer. I just need to follow my heart. No, you really don't. You shouldn't. It's not going to take you anywhere good. So, how does this track? Well, Cain's descendants lead to death, as we will soon see. Like, he goes out, right? So he kills his brother. God finds him. And God says, where's your brother, Cain? And what does he say? You remember? Am I my brother? Hey, listen. When parents ask children a question and kids deflect, we already know you've did it. Like, we just know, right? I've even told my son that. He still does it. He still deflects. It's like, buddy, it makes you look guilty. Right? It makes you look guilty. Am I my brother's keeper? That's a fascinating question. What's the answer? An emphatic yes. You are. We're relationally connected. We're absolutely each other's keepers. But here's another fascinating thing. God says to then Cain, the blood of your brother calls out to me. A God that's just in justice calls out. I don't think God's paying attention. Oh, he's paying attention. He's paying attention. It calls out. And that's actually an imagery you have in Revelation. The soul, the cries of the martyr reaches out to God. It just reaches out. Okay. But then you got Seth, which is the very end of chapter 4, and it says, from that day forward, people began to call on the name of the Lord. You're like, ooh, this is a new beginning. New beginning. And the interesting thing is the descendants of Seth lead to Noah. So Cain's going to lead to death, and the descendants of Seth are going to lead to life. And what's the difference? The presence of God. So every time you get people geographically being cast out, and moving further away. It's not just geographical. Remember, if God is life, the further you go away, you go towards death. If God is light, the further you go away, you go towards darkness. If God is truth, the further you go away, you go into self-deception. Let's go create a world of lies. And it says that Cain got married. Where did he find a wife? Not sure. He found one probably on a nap somewhere, right? So he finds one, he marries her, and then it says he goes and creates a city. He's going to go create something. If God ain't there, what kind of city will he be creating? Right? Pain and suffering. The descendants of Cain, it just says, and so had so-and-so that begotten so-and-so, that, a bunch of fascinating names. And then it gets to this Lamech character, and it just kind of pauses there and says, and Lamech had 2 wives. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so far in the story, the only wives we've had the only relationships, marriage has been with one. But now Cain goes out to create his own city without the presence of God into a world of lies and deception and darkness, and he has 2. Which one do you think is God's plan? Right? Whatever this is over here, it ain't God's plan. It isn't based on truth. It isn't based on what we were created to be. But he's got 2 wives. And then apparently in Hebrew it's a little ditty, like he sings a little song. And the song he sings basically is like, wives of Lamech, some dude cut me off and I, like graveyard dead, beat him to death dead. And he's proud of it, like he's singing a song. And you're like, that's already a problem. Cain at least didn't go out and sing a song. Cain was actually quite worried. He's like, God, if you cast me out, I know I'm going to find death. And God says, you know what? You're right. Well, I'm going to put a mark on you. You're like, what's the mark of Cain? Whatever it was, it's to protect him so that death would not come. You're like, that's kind of cool. Yeah, that's merciful. What's worse than death as a punishment? Isolation. You're going to go live in that hell you're creating. Off you go. And you're going to live there a long time. He might have wished he didn't have that mark. He's probably over there wiping it, trying to, somebody kill me, He's going to go live in that hell he's going to create. I think that's worse punishment. So, he goes out. Okay. Some key points here. Let me highlight a couple other things. So, what's this story say about relationships? First of all, it says about relationship with self. Right? That's where it starts. Our inner mess projects out. And it's because we've lost relationship with God. So here we have Cain's inner struggle. He has an inner struggle between doing what's right and between doing what he feels like doing. He's got some feelings going on here. And evil's trying to pounce off of that, onto that, and get him to act. He's got jealousy. He's got anger. Some things we can just imply. He's got some... You don't just stumble into killing. Like, this isn't a manslaughter. Like, he goes out to kill in spite of the conversation God has had with him, which God warned him. This is premeditated, enraged murder. So he's got this inner conflict, unresolved issues, and broken relationship with self, God, and his brother that he just did not or could not mend. The breakdown of the relationship with others, at least here with him and his brother, who knows parents, who knows what else. His couple things, his inability to celebrate Abel's success. Like, Thus jealousy. We can't even be happy for others. We want everybody to be, if I got to be miserable, I want everybody to be miserable. And then we go about trying to make sure everybody is. If I can't be happy with self, nobody going to be happy. And we can't even celebrate other people. So it leads him to isolate instead of, and I don't mean just like, I have no friends. I mean isolate from connection. Instead of him connecting with his brother and working this out, he has an inner, like he isolates inside with him, his thoughts, his feelings, and evil. And it just ruminates. Ruminates. And then that's going to be expressed out. It's an inner rage that's going to come out. Right? Envy, resentment, and it leads to violence. And the rhetorical question, am I my brother's keeper, actually reflects this deep misunderstanding that he doesn't have responsibility towards others. Of course he has. Of course he does. And here's the really cool thing about this story. The story isn't just presenting a sad moment between one brother killing the other. The story is making the point that the rest of the story of humanity is one brother killing the other. We can parse it whatever way we want, whatever lines we get creative with. We are killing family. It's just death. Just death. Then relationship with God, of course, right? He's got this attitude, this problem of the heart. He's being defiant. Whatever was broken between him and God, he doesn't choose to mend. He chooses to just blame others. It's fascinating to me that the very first murder in the Bible is between family, and it's also over religion. Like, we're not doing that anymore, are we? Come on. You just throw a dart in a world map, and somebody's killing somebody, and often over religion. So it's not like we've improved on that point. So here's some key points about that in just mental health. Unaddressed pain leads to destruction. You want to hide that darkness inside? First of all, you're going to spend a whole lot of energy doing it. Whole lot of it. To keep that locked, it's just, you're going to spend a lot of energy doing it. Here's the other problem, though. You got some forces really trying to get that open, looking to pounce on it. And it's going to come out. And it's going to come out because it's going to, and however it comes out, it's already eating at you. It's already eating at you. And then it's going to be eating at others. Your relationships, family, friends, parents, whatever, just going to eat. Internal struggles can, I would almost say, do affect external relationships. We normally like to trace a direct line from cause and effect, in the sense of, you make me angry. You make me lose my temper. You make me be irresponsible. It's your fault. Of course we do that. It's easier. Because otherwise, it means I share a big blame of it. It's a relational dynamic. There's a whole lot of things in between you and my response. And I don't control you, and actually wasn't created to rule you. We can try. If you've been trying to rule each other in your marriage, let me do a little Dr. Phil here. How's that working out for you? We can try. But here's one thing we can control. We've been empowered to. It's that darkness within. But here's the fascinating thing. That's actually best done if you and I stop blaming each other and collaborate. Kind of help each other along. That's where a lot of the betterment happens. There's great danger in isolation, which is that point I'm making. And I don't even mean geographical isolation. You can be married and be isolated, just within. We called out a lot of other things: stonewalling, defensiveness. What's that? Avoidance attachment styles, right? It's all a bunch of fancy words of saying we're just hiding somewhere inside. Just get in our little shell, block, don't want to talk about it, don't want to engage, don't want to be vulnerable, don't want to address it, don't want to take responsibility. We do this out of a defensive, like we feel the need to to defend ourselves because we feel attacked somehow. But here's the thing, there's no hiding in inside your brain, because that's part of where the attack is. There's no hiding in there because you got these other voices. There's no hiding. We try, but what we end up doing is locking ourselves with the boogeyman in the closet. And it just happens, like Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker goes into that cave thing to fight his inner demon, and then who shows up there?
He does.
Darth Vader, which then happens as the mask comes out, it's him. He goes to face his demon, which happens to be him. Right? So just, let me look at that Star Wars. It's so cool. God's warning is always about grace. God warns us in a lot of ways. He warns us through classes. He warns us through interactions. He warns us through signs. He even warns us through that miserable marriage you have. That is a warning. It's not working. Something needs to change. Yeah, I need to find a better spouse. Perhaps. But then you still go, you just still take you with you. It's hard to divorce the self. Then that causes other issues. Like there's the diagnoses for that. Like disassociate. We've even tried that. We try to divorce ourselves. And then we have disassociation, a bunch of other problems. God gives us warnings. Perhaps some of that anxiety, some of that depression, that is a warning. Stuff is not right. We need to do some things different. And I don't want to make it casual, just snap out of it and off you go. That's not the point I'm making. But God is warning us. And if we don't take something about that warning, we're going to go off and bash each other with a brick or whatever, words, guns. We keep finding ways to face each other at the barrel of a gun. Like that's solving anything. But it's just projecting out the pain. And that also doesn't help, because then Cain had to go live with that horrible mess. And ultimately, we have to there's this importance of, basically what I've been saying. We have to there's great importance in personal responsibility. Even if it's 2% of the relationships you're in is your fault, should be easy then. Just start with that 2%. Start there. But here's the reason often why we don't. Because we feel like if we do, we're giving our spouse, our friends, or the other people we're giving them a pass. And we want them to take responsibility as well. But we spend so much time trying to convince them to take responsibility that they become defensive, and then they spend time trying to convince us to take responsibility. Then we become defensive, and then we use criticism, contempt, stonewalling, defense, and nobody takes responsibility for anything. And here's another thing. When your spouse finally takes responsibility for something, don't be like, it's about time. Actually, it's more than 2%. That ain't going to help. Just take where they're starting and go from there, okay? So, some questions. Okay, never mind. Your handout has some questions of reflection that I just want, so to kind of put yourself in the story, okay? Next time, we're going to talk about, is it the Tower of Babel? The Tower of Babel. Austin's going to guide us through why God does not like tall buildings. So come back for that. All right, thanks for being here.